Hello, everybody. Um, this is my semester project for Political Science 4083, a political strategies class at the University of Oklahoma. And for my project, I decided to do variations on the game of chicken, or as I like to spicefully call it, the variations on the chicken. Hopefully, you enjoy it, and hopefully, I get a good grade. Anyways, so what is the game of chicken, and why do people call me that? So chicken is an anti-cooperation game where two forces are in an insurmountable standoff. What this means is that two people, they're facing each other, and if one yields, that is a greater benefit than if both yield. And also, if neither yield, then the consequences are far deadlier than if nobody yields or if one yields, right? The sides can communicate with each other, they can perform acts of diplomacy, but they cannot work together for a greater benefit. This is what causes the dilemma. This is also a key difference between this and the prisoner's dilemma, because in the prisoner's dilemma, you can cooperate and achieve mutual benefit. It just so happens that betraying your partner might be a greater benefit than if you just work together. And I decided to create 10 variations of it. So the first variation, the classical variation, the one that people automatically make, is the cars variation, the two cars. I call it the Footloose variation because it was a very cool scene in the movie Footloose. So two cars face each other. If neither stop, they crash into each other, both people die, they go to the ICU, right? If one stops, then that person is a coward or a chicken. They swerved out. They lost their masculinity on the way out. They are not Kevin Bacon, right? However, if neither plays, then you don't get this cool scene with, I need a hero, right? So you want to be Kevin Bacon in this scenario, and you want to have fun, but you also don't want the cars to crash, right? So you're just hoping to God that you're facing somebody who has less of a gut than you, who is more chicken than you. That's what you kind of want, right? So, classical variation, both people keeping the tension leads to a worse outcome than if nothing happens, but you want the other person to stand down so you reap all the benefits. Variation 2, poker, Texas Hold'em style, if there is another variation of poker. So in poker, the key idea is that you believe that you have the best hand, right? Or you want other people to believe that you have the best hand. So you keep betting money into the pot. And you can fold, which is to say that you don't participate in the final showdown and you don't get any money out of it. However, if you keep going, you could have actually a bad hand. They could call your bluff and you lose the entire thing. So that key idea of chicken is still there. Not standing down can lead to a far worse consequence than if you folded. However, it's different from classical chicken in the sense that there's no mutual destruction. The two cars don't crash. There is always going to be a better hand, and there's always going to be a winner of the pot. But not standing down can still be detrimental. And these pictures right here, I have an unrelated picture of Kenny Rogers. I don't know why he's here. It's not like he's singing any songs about gambling. And then I have that cool hype and aura scene from the movie In Time, which has been seen by everybody who watches movies on TikTok, clips only, where Justin Timberlake almost kills himself to win a hand of poker. And it's really cool. There's a lot of hype and aura around it. He had a good hand. That's what you want out of the game of chicken. But what if yielding, folding, can be just as bad as not surrendering? Then you got yourself a Mexican standoff. This is a stalemate. A stalemated confrontation where both yielding and attacking can be deadly. The idea that people think of is three cowboys pointing guns at each other. If one yields, they'll be shot, right? But if none of them surrender, then they all get shot anyway. And so yielding and reaching a diplomatic solution is probably the only way that anybody could actually win. So this might be a bit different than the game of chicken, since yielding might actually be the most rational solution. Everybody mutually yielding can be the most rational solution here. So it's more of an impasse. And plus, it's not two cars. There's often more than two parties. But it's chicken in the sense that you don't want to yield. You don't want to be called a chicken, because if you're called a chicken, you're dead, right? Then we have another classical variation with nuclear war. So two countries build up a nuclear arsenal and they make it larger and larger. You can't stand out individually because then the other country will build up their arsenal, turn your country into glass without the other country facing any real consequences. As in, like, not being turned into glass. I mean, there's still environmental, whatever. However, if neither of us stop proliferating, if we keep building it up, then it reaches an unbearable tension where we might have mutually assured destruction. That's that key, like, chicken idea, mutually assured destruction. You might end up like DEF CON over here. So it might be different, similar to the Mexican standoff, but with like two parties instead. Mutual yielding is perhaps a far greater reward than just, one yielding for the other country. So you have that like classic scene from War Games where the only winning move is not to play, but both people have to not play. So getting into something far, far more intense than nuclear war, nuclear Armageddon, dating, finding a person to be with. So you have the love triangle, the classic love triangle dilemma. So two men pine over the same girl, and they do more and more ridiculous things to win her heart. Maybe I go skydiving to show that I'm brave. Maybe he pays for like an entire class worth of meals just to prove that he's rich, right? And we do more and more stupid things until, you reach a point where she's turned off. She thinks we're both weird. However, we both love this girl so much, that if either of us yields, or if both of us yield, then we lose her. Just like in season 1 of The Summer I Turned Pretty, where Isabel Conklin decides, neither of these two guys want me, therefore I'm going to go with guy number 3, Cam Cameron, right? However, this is different from other variations in that mutually yielding is worse. It could be just as bad as just one person yielding. So you have to have a solution. She has to pick somebody eventually, right, in order to win. And so that might produce very strange strategies, just like the drama that was produced in The Summer I Turned Pretty. Y'all should watch this show. I actually kind of enjoyed it. Anyway, let's say you won the girl, and you go on a dinner date. Who pays? So we're going to assume for a second, there are no traditional gender norms in play here. Just because you're the man does not necessarily mean you have to pay for the date, right? And let's also assume that this was mutually planned. Therefore, you don't have to do that rule where it's like, oh, you planned the date, therefore you pay. So who actually pays in this situation? So both parties may want to pay, but they also may not want to pay at the same time. They want to be of service to their partner, but they also don't want their bank account number to go down. However, it feels very strange and very transactional and very like non-intimate if we just decide, oh, we're going to split the check. So we want to our want to serve our partner supersedes any desire to want to split the check. However, we also kind of don't want to pay at the same time. And you kind of have to pay. There's no mutual yielding. I don't believe in shoplifting, right? Or dine and dashing. That's the actual term. So this is a very low stakes version of the game of chicken, considering both people like each other and they do want to do things for each other. So a solution is probably going to come. Somebody is probably going to pay. But in that moment, right? In the intervening moments before somebody says, I'll pay, the woman might do the classic dinosaur trick where she takes her arms together. I can't grab the check. The dude might slowly put his hand to his pocket, tries to pull it out. So you have that interleaving tension there. It's still tension, but it's very light tension. Going into something more explicitly political in real world. Oh, never mind. Going into something that is a bit more less romantic, so to speak, the lying game. In this variation, two people lie about themselves to get attention/fame over the other. So I thought about this variation with that classic cartoon episode idea. I thought of Regular Show for this, but I remember there being a lot others. One character decides, oh, I'm just going to lie to get fame, and the other person not wanting to yield or face the inexcusable feeling of fear of missing out, also known as FOMO, they lie too. And so you get into this arms race, right? This proliferation where both people create weirder and more ridiculous lies in order to like gain fame, gain money. And it reaches a point where yielding can be very, very bad. But also, like, you're going to be found out eventually. And if both of y'all continue lying, then the consequences are just going to be just as bad. So in this variation, the idea is you got to strategically put yourself in a position where you being caught is not going to be as detrimental to you as it might be for the other person. Maybe you make a confession post. You make a very long tweet to be like, oh, this person lied. I am confessing. I demand repentance. Right? So inevitably, you might betray one another. Betrayal might be an inevitability in this situation to avoid the ultimate consequences of being caught together. Moving on to something explicitly more political this time. You have a government shutdown. Let's remove ourselves. This has absolutely nothing to do with current events or something that happened last year. But let's say, hypothetically speaking, the majority party in the U.S. Congress decided we're going to make a budget, and in that budget, we're going to include things that the opposition party considers a non-starter, and we're going to remove things that the opposition demands, right? We're going to make sure it only suits our interests. However, in the higher chamber, you have to reach 60 votes, right, in order to break a filibuster. Therefore, you still need some members of that majority party. So what do you get? You get a game of chicken where millions of people can't get paid because they're working for the government, and the government shuts down. So the issue here is that if one party yields, let's say like the majority party decides we're just gonna hold on ICE funding, then the base of that party is gonna be like, oh, but we voted for mass deportations, right? We're mad about that. And let's say the other party decides to yield because, affordable like healthcare subsidies are removed. Then the other party is like, why did we vote for you in the first place? You're extremely useless, and that cripples either party. And so you're in a situation where you have to come to this compromise that perhaps nobody will like, but will eventually fund the government, because having the government in free fall is worse than, say, pissing off a bunch of people, pissing off a bunch of voters, right? Going into something else that is political, variation 9, the Trump method, 4D chess. So this is less of a variation of itself and more just a strategy in order to win the game of chicken. This is known as the madman theory. And I use Trump as this example because recently he threatened to commit genocide, a nuclear holocaust against the country of Iran in order for them to come to the bargaining table. So you make yourself seem so crazy that people might actually believe that you're going to do it. You're holding your finger on the red button, right? And you're daring people to go against you. However, if the other person decides to call your bluff, then you might end up like this AI-generated picture right here in a chicken costume serving tacos. Trump always chickens out. So is this absolutely evil? Is calling for a genocide on a foreign population of mostly innocent people evil? Or is it a stroke of brilliance? If you don't like that sarcastic remark about the President Trump, then you might be into the 10th and final variation that I have here, the online argument. So let's say somebody didn't like what I said about Trump, and they posted a comment calling me a stupid liberal, slur, things you can't say for a college project. And I get mad, and I decided to leave a comment, you're a MAGA idiot, slur. You can't even, yo mama's so fat that she voted Republican. I don't know. And neither of you want to back down, because backing down in the online public sphere is tantamount to losing. You don't want to be the chicken. However, if you don't yield, if you decide that the online argument is worth your mental health, then you just feel like an emotional wreck, a car wreck, so to speak. And so it's just a massive mess. You send each other your parents' addresses. You dox each other. You send death threats. Somebody gets very upset. The police might be called. I don't know. And so you're just left. You're just left feeling, I shouldn't have engaged with this person to begin with. Why am I constantly trying to impress people online? Why do I make YouTube videos? If you ask these questions, you fell for variation 10 of the game of chicken. Anyway, those are all 10 of my variations. I hope y'all enjoyed it. I hope I get a good grade on this. If I didn't, I will cry. And if you don't like this video, I'll also cry. All right? So you don't want me to cry. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this. I'll see y'all later.